Hello and good afternoon, good evening. If you're from a different time zone, I am Amanda Bussiere. I am Manifest Boss Babe, and I help mentor people into their mindset. And today I'm introducing this wonderful human into the School of Humankind. We are all part of this faculty. We are just trying to create waves, make a change in this world, and help each other out, helping the world become a better place. And I am so excited to introduce you to Sorrel. She is a relationship coach and she
Yes.
has so much knowledge. I am so excited for you guys to meet her and listen to what she's all about and what she has to offer. Sorrel, where are you from?
I am from a place called Bedford, which is about 50 miles north of London in the UK.
London,
Yeah.
England. Beautiful. Uh, can you tell everybody what it is exactly that you do?
So I work one-to-one with some of my clients and I work with couples and I work with them to help them bring their relationship into a different place. So generally speaking, when things are going wrong in a relationship, we are bringing old patterns that we developed as children and we haven't updated them yet. So it's about enabling those people who are always amazing people to change the way and to grow so that they don't keep repeating these old programs, if you like.
So these people that come to you, are they even aware of these patterns or this inner child work? Or they just come to you, this relationship isn't working out, and like what point do they come to you at?
Generally speaking, they know there's a problem. Sometimes they blame it on their other half, but a lot of them recognize that they have a problem themselves, but they can't work out how to change it, how to stop doing what they're doing.
Ah. Do you work on the relationship as individual people as well? And then you work together because we're all whole people. So do you work with them individually as well?
Um, I usually work with them. Most of the sessions I see them, it will be with a couple, and sometimes I'll work with them separately. Um, the the real value in working with a couple is even when you're doing like you're doing in a child work, for instance, when one partner is in there with their sorry, let's call them X and Y. When X is in the room with Y and Y is doing the inner child work with me and X observes it, then they start to understand in a much deeper way what it was like for their partner to go through whatever it was they went through as a child, which has led them to be doing what they're doing now. And also to understand that those behavior patterns were there for a reason. They created them as adaptations to keep them safe. And it's like so you're having to let go of this old childhood pattern and replace it with something much more relational. And I teach them about relational mindfulness.
That is brilliant. Like having both of them there and just observing. That is brilliant because then they can understand exactly why that person acts, why that person says those things. That's
Yeah.
brilliant.
And it's amazing. People will, having seen their partner go through that in a child process, for instance, and see their emotional response was to that, the person observing will end up in tears as well sometimes.
So, has there ever been instances where the couples had no idea what even had happened in their past and it came up through working with you?
I don't think it's that I had no idea, but they didn't have much knowledge. They didn't understand it deeply enough. And sometimes the person themselves will have not really explored it in that much depth or, to the extent that they can in the session.
Yeah, like that's some of the stuff I do with my clients too, because they have no idea why they're feeling those things. So it's the
Mm,
outside perspective that we can give them to dig deeper.
yeah.
What is
And
your
yeah,
favorite part about it?
well, actually, this is going to sound so strange. So one of my favorite things is when someone says, but well, that wasn't that traumatic. I don't know why that's a problem. It's only that my father divorced my mother when I was 11. It's like, that's traumatic. For your parents to divorce at any time is traumatic. But so they've been minimizing that trauma and thinking, well, it's like feeling shame that you feel so bad about something that you've decided wasn't that terrible. So then for them to really kind of say, oh, I understand now. why I felt so bad, why I was so unhappy and so fearful. And then they can feel that compassion for their inner child, if you like, for that younger them. And that moves mountains. It's amazing.
It is incredible, incredible. Um, so when someone comes to you, what should they expect?
Okay. They will expect they can expect me not to judge them, to have compassion for them and empathy, and to challenge them when they're either behaving badly towards their partner or shooting themselves in the foot,
Hmm.
and to guide them. One of my clients, bless him, described me as a wise elder, which I kind of like because I'm now 67 years old and I have lived a lot of life. So I guess I bring my experience with me as well. And you know what? I was just as bad as anybody in the past. I was never an angel. So I can say, oh yeah, yeah, I used to do things like that. And then I realized what I was doing and I changed. And even that can be hard work, as you probably realize. So
Hmm. What is the number one pattern? 'Cause as I know too, working with people, there's always patterns, right? There's
yeah, there's
generally
always
patterns.
patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is like the top pattern that you find working with couples?
I would say if we just deal with a standard heterosexual couple, um, the man is more likely to be dismissive, um, possibly to be walled off. Well, actually, very likely to be walled off. So not expressing his emotions, not thinking emotions are of any value, um, and probably holding himself as superior to his partner. And she sometimes, what's interesting with the terminology we use is he's blatant, so he's got way too much self-esteem, and she's latent, so she doesn't have enough self-esteem. So part of the task is to level out their self-esteem so they regard each other as equals. Um, so yeah, so she might be latent and not lacking in self-esteem, but actually also this inclination to just kind of like just so all of her emotions out there. It's like bombarding your other half with these very, very kind of high energy negative emotions. How angry, how unhappy, how abandoned, whatever it might be. And he can't cope with it. So he goes off behind his wall where he feels safe.
And this is something from my experiences too. Men are told or taught from generations to suppress those feelings and that
Absolutely.
they're
I mean,
not
this is
allowed to be expressive and they just need to suck it up and provide and be the
yeah,
man.
man up.
Man up. Yep.
Yeah. And it's not healthy for him or for her or for his partner if they're gay. So
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, and part of that, I mean, that's just part of patriarchy, isn't it?
And how
And
women were supposed to surrender and not be vocalized. And, we're just supposed to do as we're told and be quiet,
yeah, and submissive. And
submissive.
yeah, and yet usually by the time a couple come to see me, she is already starting to connect with her own power. She's starting to stand up for herself and say, well, look, if you don't come along to couples therapy with me, it's over. So that's always that's always encouraging when I recognize that she's standing up for herself in that way.
Hmm. So usually the women are the ones that initiate the counseling, the therapy.
Usually. Sometimes they seem to have made the decision together beforehand, which is great.
I have an interesting thought for you. It's one of my
Hmm.
beliefs, but what are your thoughts about couples coming like they're not in that place of this is it, like fight or flight, you know, they're in a place where things are good and okay. Like, should they seek therapy or see someone like you in the state that they're not feeling like this is it? This is the wit's end.
Um,
Like, should they come see you before then?
yeah, I would definitely say don't wait till you got to the last resort. I mean, if you feel like there's something that's not going very well, and there are things you would like, let's say there are growth areas, but you're stuck.
Yeah.
And people will stay together for decades, just kind of rubbing along, but it just isn't there's something missing, isn't there?
Yeah.
And so definitely and it's because I don't do therapy, I do coaching,
Right.
but it's
Sorry.
kind of therapeutic coaching. So there's kind of bit of a therapeutic element to it. But if someone's got really serious trauma, I would refer them out for therapy. I wouldn't do it myself. But yeah, for that kind of thing, I think definitely
I
it's
agree.
an
Like,
investment.
I feel like there's something you want something more. You just you could have such a juicy relationship. And if you want to
Mm,
grow and expand together as a couple, I feel like why wouldn't you invest in your relationship, invest in yourselves and have
yeah,
someone like you to help them grow and expand? Like your life is great already, but what if it could be that much better? That much
yeah,
juicier? Like, wouldn't you want to have that?
yeah. But why wouldn't you?
Right?
It's like it's interesting, isn't it? Because we people spend thousands, tens of thousands of pounds, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds on their wedding.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And then they think, oh well, we'll just kind of see what happens now. And then life, you get to a certain point and you're not putting the time and the energy and the thought into the relationship anymore.
Or
And it
here's a
might be
great one.
okay, but it's not great, like you said. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say too, or even a great examples, couples quite often take holidays every year, right? They go on a hot vacation
Yeah,
and then like, oh, that was the best time ever. And they just reconnect as a couple and it was amazing. And then they come home and they're back to the grind. Like it's just the same thing over. And my thought is, what if they were to invest in themselves
yeah.
throughout the whole year and have that feeling all the time together as a couple? They could
I'd be
have
able
that
to
if
say,
they
yeah.
worked with you.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
I think
That's what I would
I think
do. Like
I think
invest in your
it's like waiting till your car is broken down instead of taking it for service, isn't it, in a way?
absolutely. Yeah. So I'm interested. How did this all start for you? How did it all start for you?
So I have an appalling relationship history. Um, I went to boarding school from the age of 11 till I was 18, which I hated. It was awful. And I didn't want to be there. And then when I was 16, 15, I met this young man called Andy. Um, so we became girlfriend and boyfriend. And then when I was just like 2 days after my 20th birthday, he took his life. Now that had actually not been a very good relationship, but it was all I knew. And all I knew was, fighting and arguing and emotional blackmail and stuff like that. Because my parents fought a lot. So that was the model I had. But obviously, when that happens to you, it really messes you up. So I had this sort of double whammy of boarding school and then bereavement by suicide. And then I met this American guy. Crazy, crazy thing. I for 2 years we wrote to each other across the Atlantic, and then I went out to join him, and we start studying at the same university. So I'd done my first degree, and I went over there to do a PhD. Um, and it wasn't so bad, but it wasn't a great relationship either. And in the end, I came back to the UK and realized after I'd left how controlling he had been. But that I still wasn't really thinking about what I might have been doing, what my contribution might have been to the dysfunction in that relationship. And then a while after that, I met my ex-husband, and we got together and we got married and had a family. And that was the worst of the lot, to be honest. And again, I could see what he was doing that was, I would say he was emotionally abusive. Um, but I wasn't seeing what I was doing. And then when I left him, I thought, well, I must have been contributing to this appalling disaster. I can't have been entirely innocent. And one thing I'd spotted was that I had this really dysfunctional level of independence, which is really characteristic of people who go to boarding school. Because you need it at boarding school, because suddenly you're in this environment where you don't have your parents. You can't go to your mum at the end of the day and say, Mummy, something's happened. You have to sort it for yourself. So I never got the hang of consulting him about stuff. And
Your
he didn't
walls
like
were up.
that. Sorry?
Your walls were up. You're protecting it.
My walls were up, yeah.
Yeah.
I was also a bit prone to unbridled self-expression, which is, the throwing out all your emotions and raging and shouting. Anyway, so I left him in 2016, by which time my daughters have grown up and got my own place. And then I was on my own for about 3.5 years. And then just before the lockdown in 2020, I met my partner. And when I met my partner, we got together, I said to him, when my sister remarried, she and her husband agreed that they were not going to argue. Do you think we could do that too? And he's, hell yeah, I don't want to argue with you. What would I want to do that for? So we have managed nearly 4 years together and we haven't argued.
Wow.
We have disagreements about
Yeah.
things, but we never kind of go off on one with each other. So we were much more conscious of how we were conducting our relationship than I'd ever been before. And he started spotting things about me, and I was spotting things about him. And he said to me one day, Sorrel, you do have to be right all the time, don't you? And I said, oh God, it's true, I do, don't I? And I do have to, and I didn't realize I had to have the last word as well. It's like I couldn't let him finish. I had to have like whatever he said, I had to have the last word just to feel like otherwise I wasn't finishing off properly. Or I had to find some little flaw in what he was telling me. And I thought, my God, this is another boarding school thing. It's got to be. Anyway, in the meantime, I was doing some trauma courses around trauma, and I came across Terry Real, who runs the Relational Life Institute, through a course that he did with a lady called Diane Paul Heller, who's a big trauma expert in America. And when he talked about how he works with his clients and with couples, I was just blown away. And I thought, this is exactly what I want to be doing. And I was coaching people then on sort of around mental health issues. And I started to notice some of the things around relationships that they brought to me. And I thought, well, this is what I want to do. And it's just been an amazing journey, actually, I have to say. Just learning the basics of how Terry's system works, which is that he takes sides. So when there is one person who's dominating the other person, he's not neutral about it. So you can kind of wait and say, hey, wait a minute. You can't speak to your wife or your husband like that. So yeah, so that's where I am now. And really focusing on people who went to boarding school, because I'm so familiar with the kind of disruptive and dysfunctional behavior patterns we end up developing at school to keep us safe, which then lets us down as adults. And of course, with John, who's also on the faculty, who's also a boarding school survivor, we're working on some stuff together to be able to work with men and women because we have different perspectives. We've been to different kinds of schools.
Yeah, that's amazing. What was I going to? Oh, what was so from your experience
Mhm.
in your own relationships and working with others, what would you say is a key element to a successful relationship?
I think there are lots of little things. Like when when he if I'm at home and he comes home, and it's my house, so he's more or less visiting me. He still has his own place, but he comes up at the weekends. When he arrives, I just drop what I'm doing and go to the door, give him a hug and a kiss. And I think actually keeping that going as a routine is really important because I think sometimes these things fall by the wayside after a few years. Um, and there's this thing called turning to bids, which basically means when somebody makes a bid for your attention, you respond to it. You don't just kind of ignore it and pretend they didn't just say something. And there's some couples, you've got this really dismissive, disrespectful behavior that, oh, leave me alone, I'm reading the paper or whatever, as opposed to saying, oh, yeah, that's interesting. So it's like I guess you're putting your relationship ahead of a lot of the other things because if you don't do that, it's like you're not feeding. You need to feed it and nurture it. You need to nurture the relationship, I guess I'm trying to say,
Mhm.
not just yourself and your partner.
Mhm. I feel communication is huge
It
in
is
any
enormous.
relationship.
Yeah. And
And I feel like
learning how to communicate in a way that is loving
with
as a
intention, what is your intention behind your communication with
mm,
partner.
Absolutely, yes. And then just,
Yes.
the art of listening. And there's some real kind of like, it seems obvious, but it obviously can't be. Like, don't complain, make a request.
Yeah. And it's like, how are you feeling when you're communicating at that moment? Like, what is your intention? Are you upset? Like, has how you communicated at that moment,
Mm,
is however you're feeling is how you're going to communicate it. So if you're riled up already, it's going to come
yeah.
off totally differently. And then they're going to not as,
Yeah. And actually, one of the things I would say is do not communicate from bad feeling. So say that I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling angry, or whatever, but don't try and have a conversation about something important like where you're going to go on holiday next year or whether or not you should get another dog. Keep those keep those discussions for when you're both in a good mood.
yes, yes. Um, what else to say? Oh,
You had a question?
I did. I was gonna, shoot, it's gone. It was like right in the moment there. Um, it's gone.
Gone. Oh, well, never mind. That's okay.
Gone. So if someone was to reach out to you,
Mhm.
how do they get a hold of you?
Oh,
They want to start
well,
working with you.
multitude of ways. I've got an email address. They can find me on LinkedIn. Do my name? It's so uncommon that I'm really easy to find on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever.
Mhm.
I'm not very active. I'm active on Facebook, but I'm not very consistent about checking my notifications and things. So LinkedIn is a much better. I'm much more careful about LinkedIn. And
And
my
also
email address is,
the School of Humankind, of course,
of
because
course,
all of
is that
your
as well.
information, that's probably the best landing page is to go there.
Um, School of Humankind is a great place to go because that will take people through to my website, and
Mhm.
that's a good point, actually, Amanda. I hadn't thought about it
Yeah.
that way.
And
Yeah,
then I was thinking too, because then they can find out, they can see all of the events that you're going to be presenting too.
yeah,
Because you have
yeah.
some
So
stuff coming up, don't you?
yeah, so John and I are doing a sort of two-way thing. He's interviewing me later this month, and I'm interviewing him. Then I can't remember what the dates are, but it's a Thursday followed by a Tuesday.
Oh yeah.
It's Tuesday the 26th, so it's the Thursday before that.
Oh yeah.
And then we've got a paid for workshop for people who went to boarding school coming up in December.
Nice.
Um,
And that's about the boarding school. So he'll be interviewing you from your point of view, being in boarding school, and you'll
yeah,
be interviewing him.
yeah, that's right.
Nice.
Because there's a big contrast between the experiences of girls and boys. I spoke to somebody yesterday, like in a one-to-one, just a, coffee chat, who told me he went to boarding school in the 80s and they used the birch.
A
I
what?
honestly think the birch had been outlawed before the 1980s. I
What's
was
that?
shocked. I'm not entirely sure, but it's worse than it's worse than being caned. And the
Oh,
cane was definitely in use. Yeah, there was a lot of physical abuse of boys, but there wasn't in my school. I went to school in the 70s. There was no physical abuse, but there was a lot of shaming and humiliation and just stupid punishments.
hmm.
But then punishments usually are stupid. I don't think punishments are supposed to make any sense.
Hmm. So I suppose like you could really relate even with people that are in emotionally um, abusive relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it'd
And
be the same.
people who had emotionally abusive parents, and yeah, or physically abusive.
Or do you know what? There's even those parents that maybe didn't have that good relationship with their parents and
Oh
didn't
yeah,
know how to love properly. So then they
absolutely.
didn't share or pass on the loving and caring that we needed as babies and children,
That's right.
causing that inner
And
child.
you don't know how many generations it goes back.
I know. It's incredible.
Yeah. And yet
It's,
there's always the potential for reconciliation with parents. One of my mentors is a so in Canada there used to be this Scottish mystic, I think you would call him, called Sydney Banks, who lived um on a place called Salt Spring Island, which is near Vancouver.
hmm,
And he had this sort of enlightenment experience. which is lovely actually. He's been dead for some time now, but so the couple who kind of inherited all his papers who he mentored were called Chip and I've got a Jan Chipman. So Chip was the son of a steel worker somewhere in Canada, I forget where, probably in Vancouver actually, or somewhere around there. And his father was a union man, and you can imagine working in the steelworks is really hard labor. And there were six children, and Chip was the eldest, and his father was very violent and alcoholic, as had his own father been, and we don't know how many generations back it goes. And Chip left the house when he was 17 because he couldn't take it any longer because he'd been trying to protect his younger siblings from his father. But, nonetheless, in the end, he was able to forgive his father and he saved his life because his father was in the hospital close to death, having been a heavy smoker and a heavy drinker all his life. And Chip said something that kind of pulled him back. And he left hospital, gave up the drinking. I'm not sure about the smoking. Maybe he probably smoked. So and then lived another 7 years. And so there's something about the reconciliation between father and son, and the fact that his father's life was extended in that way because his son forgave him and came to him and gave him what he needed to pull up that inner energy and that inner well-being to heal himself, which is, I think, is absolutely extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. I was just watching a podcast about that. I have another group that I'm a part of, and we talk about the emotional attachments and energy and how it actually causes illness in your body.
Oh yeah.
And the doctor that was talking about it was working in palliative care. And he said that
Yeah.
like they're on their deathbed and they're saying their regrets and everything, and how things just um the suppression that we put in, all these emotional things
Mhm.
actually leads to autoimmune disease.
It
It's very
does.
interesting. People don't know this. I'm like, if you
Oh
guys could
yeah.
work on yourselves now and get that inner child work done and
Oh
remove all
God,
those
yeah.
emotional attachments, you could heal your body.
You can. I've seen people do that, but I also saw my mother not do it. My mother had rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune disorder.
Hmm.
I swear she could have, she would have, but in those days, I didn't know any of this stuff when she was ill. Um, and neither did she.
It's
And
crazy.
all I knew was that I was pretty damn sure that it was connected to the rage that she experienced and I think that was intergenerational rage.
But where did that rage come from? And that's the thing is they say, oh, these autoimmune diseases are generation, like they're generational. Well, yeah,
Mhm.
'cause so is the
Yeah,
emotional attachments.
yeah, absolutely. And
Incredible.
then Gabor Mate talks about not saying no. So people who cannot say no and take on things they cannot cope with end up ill. And it's not just about overloading yourself, it's also about it's like your body's saying no, isn't it? And I know sometimes my body says no. It's like you're doing too much. I'm going to put you in bed. I get really ill. I can't get out of bed. And then I know
It,
I've overdone and I should probably stopped a couple of days earlier.
exactly. If you don't,
Yeah,
yeah, you don't stop, your body will make you stop.
exactly.
It's such a beautiful, oh, it's amazing what your
It is.
body,
Yeah.
yeah. Very interesting. I love that stuff too. But we should wrap this up.
Yeah.
It was great meeting you, and I'm so excited for what you can bring to this, the School of Humankind. We have so many incredible people on our faculty, and I love meeting them all. And
It's
we all
great to
have
be.
like the same vision, I feel like. I feel like the general vision of it all is trying to just create an impact on the world.
There's that and then that kind of urge to reconnect. Yeah. Because
Yeah,
it's not just about, for me, it's not just about couples, it's about all the connections that we form and connecting with the world itself, not just human beings, but the whole ecosystem, whatever you want to call it.
exactly.
So,
I love
yeah,
it.
I think the School of Humankind has got an amazing mission. Is that the word?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, perfect. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for interviewing me. It was lovely. It's a
Bet.
great conversation.
And have a great evening.
Yeah, you too. Well, have a great afternoon.
I will. Okay, take care.
You too.